The 1920s introduces a change in the image of women and their roles in society. Women's fashion was a notable difference in the new society as the old Victorian style of heavy floor-length corset-based dressing along with long hair is now replaced with short skirts, pumps, jewelry, and jet black bobbed hair.
Some, but not all, young women live the scandalous flapper nightlife, which brings up new ideas of womanhood and female behavior. The flapper attitude is characterized by the daring, fast living, enjoying the risque way of life, and promiscuous behavior. Although the flapper life is not embraced by many, the look is fashionable among office workers, store clerks, and college students. This is their way of asserting new modernity and sexual freedom.
The household wives work long hours for cooking, cleaning, and raising children. However, machines make such tasks much easier. Mothers become chief shoppers and chauffeurs. Middle-class households have irons, washing machines, gas and oil-powered central heating, and hot water heaters. As advertising becomes more and more prominent, there is a new pressure on housewives to buy products. Due to the rising employment of minority women, as well as daughters of working families staying in school longer, there is also a shortage of domestic servants to help out housewives with childcare.
During the war, women took over the roles of male soldiers in urban jobs. After the war, 2 million women enter the workforce, while men take back their former jobs. By 1930, 10.8 million hold paying jobs and agricultural jobs shrink. Sex segregation occurs, and women's wages never exceed half of those paid to men, and women seek jobs seldom sought by men. Over 1 million were teachers and nurses, and 2.2 million were typists, bookkeepers, filing clerks, store clerks, waitresses, and hairdressers. Creative occupations include department store hirings, where with skill and intelligence, women could work their way up to being designers. The latter group was entrusted with securing apparel, which could include traveling to London or Paris to build connections and fashion knowledge. There are also chances in writing, dancing, acting, and singing for women. As consumerism tempts working class and middle class families to satisfy their wants and needs, families seek to expand their income with women's wages.
Due to economic necessity and unemployed husbands, minority women enter the labor force. The proportion of racial minority women in paid labor is double that of white women. While the majority of African American women hold domestic jobs of cooking, cleaning, and laundry, few hold factory jobs in the least desirable and lowest paying work. However, educated black women who have jobs in social work, teaching, and nursing face discrimination and low incomes. Employed black mothers call on family to help with child care. Although it is against their tradition, Mexican women work as domestic servants, operatives in garment factories, and agricultural laborers. Japanese American women work as field hands in domestics where they encounter racial bias and low pay.
With new technology and new uses for time, changes in daily habits are inevitable. Days are split into work, family, and leisure, and urbanization creates new modern values, which shape this dynamic decade. Women especially engage in activities previously limited to men. Acceptable and inappropriate behavior create blurred lines, and with speakeasies, drinking, smoking, and frankness about sex are very fashionable. New energetic and obscene dances like the Charleston and the Black Bottom become popular as women have no problem in expressing themselves.
Many unmarried young Americans go on dates to new commercial amusements, such as movies, nightclubs, and cafes. Former dating and courtship habits come to an end, and dates are unsupervised, with urbanization encouraging such habits. Men usually ask girls out for social engagements and spend money on her, since she can't afford going out. Although a woman decides who she dates and wants to maintain independence, she is faced with moral difficulties.
Family life is deteriorating as well. Divorce rates rose from one divorce for every 7.5 marriages to 1 in 6. Birth control becomes popular among certain circles, and family sizes rarely reach more than 5 children. With longer life expectancies and lower birth rates, adults devote less time to raising children and spend more time doing non-family activities. Aside from new sexual customs, trends with children occur too. State child labor laws and attendance rules keep children in school longer than before. This results in more social youngsters since they spend more time in peer groups rather than with parents.
Gay and lesbian culture emerges from the closet. Some people accept gays while others defend older values. Non-traditional city neighborhoods with cheap rents and tolerance for alternate lifestyles attract homosexuals. Many spend time at dance halls, speakeasies, cafes, and others. One of the most famous gay-oriented club of the era is Harry's Hansberry Clam House, a narrow, smoky speakeasy. The Clam House features the Gladys Bentley, a 250-pound masculine dark-skinned lesbian who performs all night long in a white tuxedo and a top hat.
From new scientific research, people start to become more and more aware of their health. Because of the discovery of vitamins, nutritionists advise people to eat certain foods to prevent illness. However, the manufacturers of milk, canned fruits, vegetables, and other foods such as Welch's grape juice took advantage of the vitamin craze, claiming that their foods were rich in vitamins. Because Americans start to have a better diet and hygiene, the total American population became healthier. The life expectancy increased to about 54 to 60 years old, the infant death rate decreased by 2/3, and the population over the age of 65 increased by 35%. However, the increase in life expectancy is dependent on race and class. For example, in non-whites, the infant mortality was increased by 50 to 100%. The rate of fatalities from car crashes also grew by 150%.
Furthermore, the number of elderly increases, and worsening economic status creates need for pensions and other old age assistance. Industrialism supports youth and agility, so older, less capable people are being pushed into poverty from forced retirement and reduced income. Most other nations support pension systems. However, U.S. belief is that individuals should prepare for their own old age by saving in youth, and that pension systems are socialistic, un-American, and communistic. Older people either mostly dominate state poorhouses or are financially dependent on others. However, resistance starts to break out at the state level, led by Isaac Rubinow and Abraham Epstein, and reformers work with unions, associations, and legislators to promote pensions.
Labor leaders are gathering support by warning that immigrant workers will depress wages and raise unemployment. As technology developed, mechanization replaced cheap laborers. There is a preference for Anglo-Saxon Protestant immigrants and prejudice against Catholic and Jews. The Emergency Quota Act restricts the annual immigration of a given nationality to 3% of the immigrants from that nation residing in the U.S. in 1910. 3 years later, the National Origins Act limits the annual immigration to 150,000 people, 2% of each nationality residing in the U.S. in 1890. Asians are banned completely, and Southern and Eastern Europeans are further restricted. In addition, foreign-born wives and children of U.S. citizens can enter as non-quota immigrants. Later, the National Origins Act was revised to be distributed among European countries in proportion to natural origins. Proof of anti-immigration lies in the case of Sacco and Vanzetti, conviction of murder and robbery in 1921. Bias behind their nationality and their anarchist ways is said to have been the cause of their conviction.
As another line of defense, the Ku Klux Klan is revived by William J. Simmons, an evangelist and insurance salesman. Formerly a hooded order that terrorized Southern communities after the Civil War, the Hood's intimidating tactics and mystical terminology is all reinstated. Edward Clark and Elizabeth Tyler, hired to recruit new members, helped the community spread from Deep South to Oregon and Indiana, where Klansmen hold governorship. Membership in Klan ranges from urban middle class, fearful of losing social and economic gains, to women with a special branch, the women of the Ku Klux Klan, who are protected by Klansmen against domestic abuse. According to Imperial Wizard Hiram Wesley Evans, white supremacy is a matter of survival, and Klan activities consist of threatening assemblies, violence, and economic pressure. Eventually, in 1925, the Invisible Empire weakened and scandal undermines moral base. The Indiana Grand Dragon, David Stevenson, is convicted of second-degree murder, an exclusive brand of patriotism, of purity cannot compete in the new society.
The gap between the wealthy and poor is becoming wider and wider, and in the financially unstable areas, religion is more relevant to the people that feared the attack on traditional religion, also known as revivalism by modernists. Some revivalists condemn dancing, the new fashion, sex in movies, and parked cars, a private place for couples. Urban revivalists supported prohibition against poverty, immorality, and corruption. Pentecostal churches attracted African Americans, and whites swayed with pageantry and depiction of their personal savior using modern advertising techniques, radio broadcasts, and magnetic revivalist preachers. African Americans amassed an interracial following and stirred revivalist fervor. They also sought fellowships in civic organizations such as Rotary, Elks, and women's clubs.
As nativists are trying to establish ethnic and racial purity, religious fundamentalists are seeking spiritual purity in society. Americans follow Protestant evangelical denominations to find salvation from society's materialisms. Fundamentalists condemn the teaching of the theory of evolution, while modernists use reasoning from social sciences, psychology, and anthropology. Modernists believe that God is important to the study of culture and history, but science advances knowledge.
To add fuel to the fire, in 1925, Christian fundamentalism clashes with modernism in Tennessee. Earlier that year, the state passed a law forbidding public schools from teaching the theory of evolution. However, John Thomas Scopes, a high school teacher, volunteered to serve in a test case, thus resulting in his arrest for violating the law. Former Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan argues for the persecution and takes a stand as an expert of the Bible, and Scopes is convicted. However, this proves to be a victory for modernists and shows the illogicality of fundamentalism.
The 1920s was a dynamic decade filled with change and new findings that connect to our life today.